Dan here, copywriter and marketing consultant. Welcome to the Actual Marketing Show, where I talk to business leaders about their marketing strategies and what actually works for them. Entrepreneurs are bombarded daily with the latest marketing tactics, and when they try one out, they are often met with failure. So I thought, why not go to the source? Why not talk to actual hardworking business leaders in the trenches and battling it out daily to find out what works for them and what doesn't? Let's get to it. Today, I'm having Richard Western on the show. He is from Mainstream Leasing, and he has achieved some success in helping land difficult deals for his clients who don't fit inside the traditional leasing model. So welcome to the show, Richard. I'd like to ask you, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, thanks. Yourself?
I'm doing great. Excited to talk with you today and get, when I first heard about your business, equipment leasing broker, at first I was like, I didn't realize what that existed. You know, I actually, as a mechanic, at one point I worked in the rental industry for a rental house, and I never even heard that there was somebody that helps people. You know, most people would go to the rental house to get their equipment, but to actually have somebody that goes out and helps them find the best deals for them, and I thought that was quite interesting. So why don't you just give us an overview of who you are and what you do?
Well, as you said, I'm a broker, and my job is basically to match up people that are looking for financing to lease equipment with leasing companies with money to put out on leases. It's quite a varied market. There are a lot of different parameters, the type of product, the type of business, where they're located, how long they've been in business. There's a lot of variables that go into putting a lease together. And I guess part of what I enjoy is I always tell my clients that if I have a gut feeling that it's a good deal, I'll put the deal together and overcome whatever small obstacles there may be in the way of getting traditional financing. Because there are a lot of business people who aren't aware of all the different options that are available to them. So I help fill their needs.
Yeah, and that's I took a look at your website there before the show started just to get a better idea of your company there, and you have some great explanations on there on how you can help people that that can't maybe get traditional financing and maybe in a tough spot, but they really need the equipment to keep their business moving forward. And it looks like you're pretty good at that, at helping people stay in business,
Well, there's a famous quote that most businesses fail not because they're not profitable, but because of cash flow. So to tie their working capital up into assets that they need for their business, does restrict their ability to manage the cash flow. And what we're going through now with COVID-19 is a perfect example where businesses that are not liquid are having a very difficult time surviving. Mm-hmm. And I have clients that have leased equipment rather than purchased it and kept their capital free. So they're finding it a little bit easier than the companies that have bought and paid for their equipment, but are limited in their amount of working capital.
Yeah, that was something, when I said I worked at a rental house there, you look at some of this equipment that we rent out and the prices that would be charged, say, on a monthly rate. And, they buy these new, say, ground heaters, and they say, oh, well, in the wintertime, we'll pay that off. And through the rental, we'll end up buying that equipment for, in 3 months. The customer will pay for it in 3 months.
Yeah.
But like you said, the customer could go buy it, but in 3 months, it's no longer tied up in their problem, right? So,
right.
I guess that's why that makes sense to sometimes lease something and not keep your, then your capital's free after you're done with it, right? So, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, companies need capital to finance receivables. They may need it to finance inventory. Again, something like what we're going through right now, they would find that their receivables are not coming in quite as fast as they expected. So they need a little bit of a buffer to to help them weather the storm.
Mm-hmm.
So by keeping some of their capital free, they put themselves in a better position.
It's good that they have guys like you to help them find those solutions, right?
Well, there are different options, so it's important to have someone who's knowledgeable. It's no different than an insurance broker who understands the insurance business and will guide their clients and advise them on the right type of policy. It's the same type of thing.
Let's go into this next question here. It's, what's your why? Why did you decide to pursue this profession? You know, what's kind of your story? How'd you get into it?
I started out in the equipment business, and I used leasing as a very, very effective sales tool when you're selling equipment. And I progressed from the equipment business into the leasing because of the opportunities and the potential that I saw with financing. It's the cornerstone of every business. So I enjoy what I do because every file is a new challenge. I haven't seen any two that are the same. I get a lot of satisfaction when I see the need. I help them identify what their need is. I might bring a little bit of clarity to the situation for them. Sometimes their vision might be a little bit more short-sighted or focused on their immediate needs and not quite enough of their longer-term goals. So the plan is not just about getting this piece of equipment, but they need another piece of equipment in the fall or next year. So by understanding the big picture, I can help put together a plan for them that accommodates not only their immediate needs, but their growth plans as well. And I get a lot of satisfaction when I have a client. I have a client, for example, that I spoke to them for probably 2 years before they finally said, okay, I'm ready to lease something. They were of the old school of, you know, if you don't have the money to pay for it, don't get it. And which is very good, especially for personal finance. But what it was doing was restricting the growth of his company. And once he started leasing like crazy. He was doing a lease every month. And in the last year, his year was more than double the previous year because he had the equipment that he needed. And his business wasn't being governed by whether or not he had the equipment he needed. It was just a matter of he now had what he needed to fill the jobs, and he could meet the customer's demand. So he was amazed at just how much his business grew in the year since he started leasing. So that's very gratifying. And when I see an opportunity, I'm able to come up with a nice solution for them.
You actually can understand the big picture. I think that's kind of something that differentiates a service provider from, say, somebody that is kind of almost like a working partner, right?
Yeah.
You know, some businesses or service providers, they say, oh yeah, you need this, here you go. Here's the deliverable, right? If you can go in there and say, hey, you know, I understand what's going on with your company, and I think this is the best solution based on your current situation. That's what really sets people apart, you know.
Yeah, and I do enjoy. I mean, I do have many clients that rely on me for advice, and I mean, I'm not a partner, but they value my opinion, and I help them in the decision process. So that part of it makes it very enjoyable.
Yeah, it's good to hear. What is your greatest business achievement? You know, I kind of introduced you as being able to help your clients in difficult situations where they don't fit a traditional leasing model.
I think my greatest achievement is just developing relationships and business friendships with clients that come to appreciate my efforts and recognize and see the benefit they're getting by utilizing my services. That's the most gratifying.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of one in particular, I probably could name half a dozen different situations where for whatever reason they were, you know, their back was against the wall and I was able to come up with a solution for them. So those are what I'd consider, my successes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's seeing others succeed, I guess, makes you feel good, makes it all worthwhile, right?
Well, I mean, I also see deals that shouldn't be done.
Oh,
I
yeah.
see people that come to me and it's not realistic in terms of what it is they're trying to do. And no disrespect to them, but they just don't see it in the proper perspective. I've advised people in that respect too, that, listen, here are the weak points, and here's what I feel you have to be able to show before you can really progress with adding additional lease financing. So, that's helpful to people too.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're kind of helping them keep back from that, that cliff, right? Saying, hey, don't go any further here.
Yeah, that's right.
Many business leaders don't often consider themselves marketers, but I think we can all agree that in order to succeed at business, you need sales. And whether a business owner realizes it or not, they're doing something to market themselves and make those sales happen. So, Richard, what does your business do to market itself?
A lot of networking.
Yeah.
It's a lot of networking. It's developing and maintaining and building on relationships, referrals. Because once you get a client that you've provided a solution to various degrees, whether how difficult it is to provide that solution, but once you provide that solution to them, then it becomes an ongoing client on an ongoing basis over time. So I would say the majority of my marketing is really just word of mouth, building on relationships and referrals, using LinkedIn, and then just communicating with people.
Yeah, no, that's good. Getting a new customer is the most expensive in regards to time and money. Getting them in the door, right? And then once you have them, you build that relationship, and they can help bring in more people for you, right? So yeah, it looks like you're really working on that, taking advantage of the whole viral marketing thing. Referrals, word of mouth.
Well, they say the average sale takes 5 calls. So from initially making the contact to developing in the business, it rarely happens quickly. It's over a period of time. And the thing that amazes me are the number of people that comment. If I speak to someone and say, okay, I'm gonna call you on June 26th, and I call them on June the 26th, the number of people that are surprised that I remembered to call them, which it baffles me. I mean, it's just what you said you're going to do, but there are a lot of people that aren't following up when they say they're going to follow up. So it's important to, like any friendship or relationship, it's important to be fair and do what you say you're going to do.
But yeah, I guess something as simple as just remembering to call somebody, right? I mean, that sets the groundwork for what they can expect from you, right? To say, hey, this guy remembered to call me, 2 weeks later. And you were talking about network marketing, and there's various types of ways to proceed with that. What have you seen to be the most effective methods or strategies for you?
I'm always looking for new secrets, new ways of improving. Most effective, though, I think is still talking to people and maintaining that relationship. I spoke to one guy this morning, and he said, give me a call in September, October. So I will call him in September, October. I had another guy in Vancouver I spoke to the other day. It was kind of funny. I saw him on LinkedIn. He was asking, he had some equipment that he needed shipped virtually the same day. And I knew of a company that I had used and people that had used it. So I called him and I recommended this company to him, which worked out for him. That's and good. While I'm talking to him, I mentioned leasing. So I had a meeting today with his sales manager for leasing his equipment. So I was able to do something to help him. It was a fluke. It just happened to see it, and I had a solution for him. But it was a nice way of starting a relationship with the company. So
kind of give it a little bit first. No, that's good. Do you typically reach out to people you think might be of interest, or do you usually try to Like how do you approach people, I guess you could say, right?
They come from a number of different sources. It can be someone that needs equipment and wants to lease it. It can be someone that sells the equipment and might have someone that wants the financing and would like me to help them when they have a customer that needs it. It can be someone who has an associate, a colleague, somebody that they can refer me to. It can be a certain type of product that I might look at for other companies in the same business. So there isn't really any hard and fast rule as to how you find the prospect. It's just once you find a prospect, a lead, something that has potential, then you follow the routine and follow it through.
I know I just kind of go a little bit deeper into this subject because I find it really interesting. You know, you see a post on LinkedIn or a comment or somebody says, hey, I know a guy. Do you typically start off with a phone call, or do you send them an email, or what's your kind of go-to way of connecting?
The best way to start is with a phone call, unless they say, you know, here's an email first. I need the phone call to screen the person, to get a feel for what it is they're looking for and to see if their expectations are reasonable. Yeah. Some people's expectations are not reasonable.
Yeah, you got to make sure that you can actually help them, right? You don't want to bring them on and then find out later it's just not going to work.
They're just not realistic. I mean, if I decided I was going to open a garage and repair automobiles, I have no experience, no knowledge about that. So if you're comparing me to you and you have that background, you have that experience, then that's a very important difference between why my application would not be considered versus yours would be considered because of your expertise. Yeah. So it's all of those things that you have to really get a feel of what it is, what the need is, and then develop a solution to fill the need.
You've been doing this for a number of years, so you probably over time just kind of know the right questions to ask and, you know, to figure out these people are realistic on their expectations, right?
I had one guy one time who was opening a restaurant, and I asked him what his experience was in the restaurant business. And he said, and I kid you not, he said, well, I eat in them a lot. That was his explanation. That was his industry experience. So I nicely suggested that I probably couldn't help him.
If you wanted to move that forward there, you probably should try to find a business partner that does have the experience or something.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
So now we're going to kind of get into the sadder side of the show. Mm-hmm. This is what marketing efforts have you tried that just haven't worked? You know, what have you tried? You failed at them. Failure leads to success over time, I guess, when you figure out what doesn't work.
I tried Google ads and did not have much success with it. I was very disappointed, very surprised. It just was not effective. I'm not quite sure why it didn't work, which is probably why it didn't work. I guess I didn't understand it. But I still think a big part of it is, you know, the part about being in front of the customer. So it's the personal contact, which is mostly by telephone, but it's personal contact. And the fact that it's not necessarily one attempt. It's a number of different attempts. But the internet's a wonderful thing, but there's a lot of traffic on it. There's a lot of people that are being inundated with information, with emails. You know, it's like what happened years ago when the fax machine became popular. People were just being inundated with faxes.
Yeah.
You know, didn't read them, just threw them in the garbage. In fact, got annoyed because it was costing them paper and print all these damn faxes. Email is good, but it has to be used properly and not to be an annoyance. So I wouldn't call it a failure as so much as a challenge. There's so much information available. There's so many people that I have access to. It's a matter of knowing how to approach them and get your foot in the door.
It all comes down to relevance, right? I guess everybody has so much information thrown at them every day online and on their phones and in the mailbox, and what they actually stop to look at is is stuff that's relevant to what they're feeling at the moment, right?
Yeah.
And,
When I finish a deal, I'll often go back. If I do the deal, or even if the deal falls through, I'll go back and look at the history of the file, where it came from, what I did, and hopefully garnish from that the things that I did right, and then maybe the things that I could have done differently or did wrong. There is a pattern to it. It's also quite fascinating where some of the deals come from. It's just amazing.
keeping track, I mean, that's important. As a copywriter, I like to specialize in direct response, right? So that's trackable advertising campaigns. Everything should be tracked. And you learn so much from the data to say, well, this worked, this didn't work. So yeah, like even for yourself with network style marketing, that's cool to hear. You go back and check everything out and say, where did this come from, and why did it not go through?
Mm-hmm.
That's very smart to do that. I don't know if everybody does do that, right? Over the years, you've been marketing your business through network marketing. You've tried Google Ads, that didn't really work out for you, but you analyze your previous deals to see what did and what did not work. So I guess over this time, what have you learned about your marketing since entering business?
It's important. It's always changing. It's a challenge to keep up with it. Challenge to keep up with changing technology, and never to lose sight of the basic principles. You can have the best software in the world, but if you're not making the right kind of contact with your customer, your client, it's not effective. So whether something can happen instantly or takes 2 days, that's not the important thing. The important thing is whether it's meeting the needs of your client, addressing their concerns, solving the pain for them, as the expression goes. If you find out what's causing them pain, and then find the solution to take care of the pain for them.
If they have a problem, you can solve it. I mean, that's where the, what do you call it, intersection is, right? Between you and them. So I just have a few more questions here, and then we'll probably have to wrap up the show. In today's market, I mean, I guess today's market's a little bit, we call it the black swan. It's not in the best condition because of COVID, right? But I guess in today's market, or even in I guess a more normal market, what's frustrating you the most in growing your business?
Well, the COVID market is really what it's interesting. It's been 3 months now. Initially, people were just scared. Like they'd never seen anything like this happen, where it just virtually stopped one day, and everybody was told to stay indoors, and so none of us had ever seen anything that in our lifetime. I'm finding now, after 3 months, I'm finding people I talk to, a surprising number say that they're busy, just as busy as they were before, maybe even busier. Some people are saying they want to wait and see what's going to happen. They're still being very cautious. The immediate market is the conditions or factors that we've never dealt with before. In a more general sense, I think you said what I found most frustrating. Some people don't really appreciate the structure of a business, how important proper financing is in the business. I alluded to it earlier, talking about personal finance versus business finance. In personal finance, if you want to buy a stereo, for example, and that is a luxury item, that's purely how much enjoyment you get from that piece of electronics, and whether you spend $500 or $2,000, it's a question of, one, if you can afford the $2,000, and if it's worth $2,000 to you. It might be to you, it might not be to me. The difference in a business is that same $2,000 piece of equipment is not a luxury item. It's a tool they use for the business. So that $2,000 tool might save them $3,000 a month in labor costs, or might generate $3,000 a month in additional revenue. So it's a very different way of looking at it. So if it costs, just to pick a number, let's say it costs them $300 a month, it wouldn't be that high, but just as an example. So if it's costing $300 a month and they're generating, $1,500 a month in additional revenue, it's a net $1,200 gain. Whereas that stereo that you bought for $2,000 is just sitting there. One, it's depreciating, and two, you're enjoying it. So a very, very different mindset. Yeah. And I think the most frustrating thing I find are people that limit themselves and really put restrictions on their business that make it more difficult than it need be, because they're not taking advantage of opportunities to give them working capital, to leverage their working capital to make their business more profitable and for it to grow, to be healthier, I guess, so it'll grow faster. Yeah, I guess, if they can spend a little bit now, and it makes them more over time, right? Like it's a totally different situation from a luxury item. So that makes, and you're saying that it frustrates you because sometimes people just don't see that, right? Yeah. They say, I don't have $2,000, so I'm not going to buy that tool. Meanwhile, if they leased it, and let's say it costs them $150 a month to lease it, and it generates them $400 or $500 a month in revenue, they're still up $200 or $300 a month in profit. So why doesn't that meet the objective of the company? Yeah, it seems fairly straightforward to me. I mean, I had a client years ago, I leased canoes. And people said, nobody leases canoes. And I worked on a project and we leased canoes to outfitters and resorts. And the reality was the canoe cost about $80 a month to lease. And they were renting for $20 a day. Oh, so wow. It didn't take too many days to cover the cost of the canoe. It was a very, very profitable program. Yeah. So versus the resort that said, I just keep these old canoes, which were 25 years old, and were not very appealing. This company was this company was delivering brand new canoes every year, and customers were happy and they were making a lot of money with it. So so in terms of frustration, I mean, it's really important to understand and appreciate the value of what makes that company tick. I guess I got a little bit of a question here in regards to educating your customers. I mean, for myself, if I want to talk to a potential customer or client and say, I'm going to write some copy for you, and I want them to understand that my copy has to go into a certain flow of the marketing channel. You can't just take it and slap it anywhere, right? But that's kind of what sometimes people think. Oh, I hire a copywriter, write me some copy, I'll just slap it in newspaper. It's like, no, it wasn't meant to go there, Yeah. And you want to educate them, and maybe sometimes they don't want to be educated. They just how do you kind of go about that, educating people in a way that they're not going to take offense to it almost, Well, I call what you're referring to, I call that reasonable expectations. So if your client comes to you and wants you to do some work and says, well, don't bother doing these parts of it because I'll just do it myself. Or my daughter's very good at that kind of stuff. I'll just get her to do that part of it. Things like that are warning signs, because they're telling you that they really don't get it. They don't understand what they should be expecting from you and what the results of what you do, what that will mean to them. There's two parts to your question. First of all one is to determine how realistic their expectations are. And if they're in the right zone, if they have a reasonable idea of what should be accomplished, then then you can get into details and then provide additional information, which helps educate them and maybe suggest options they weren't aware of.
Yeah.
But if you have a client that comes to you and all they're interested in doing is trying to nickel and dime you down in price and dissect what you do because their daughter is very smart in high school and they think that she can do part of what you're doing, it's not going to work. It's not going to work because they have lost sight or don't see the vision that they need to see when they're putting a project like that together. So it's the same with financing.
I guess kind of like you're saying, the pre-screen, right? You kind of try to understand them before you move forward.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really good. That's some golden nuggets for the show here.
Well, it's important that everybody's realistic. It's important that the customer is realistic in terms of their expectations. It's important that I'm realistic in terms of what it is I can offer them. And then what I'm suggesting is the proper fit, that I'm not pushing something on them that really doesn't suit their needs. It's not in their best interest, because I look at the long-term relationship. And if I put them into something that isn't the right solution, it's not going to develop into a long-term relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I have clients that I've told them that and come back later and they'll thank me for that. They appreciate that I was not just looking out to make a buck, that I was also trying to be objective and consider their needs.
Integrity, honesty, being upfront. I mean, that's all they call those platitudes of a good company, right? But you see it that sometimes it's on every company's mission statement, but they don't always follow it. But when you do follow it, it shows, right? And it sounds like you got that kind of nailed down.
That's the gratification when you get a phone call from a client that you dealt with. I had one the other day from a guy in Vancouver, and I did a lease with him about 1.5 years ago, and it was very gratifying because when he needed a machine, he thought of me. He called me. So that says a lot. It means that he was happy with what I did, and because there's no doubt that other people have approached him since then about leasing equipment, but he was satisfied and appreciated what I did and felt it was more important that he worked with me than to go with someone else. So
that's great.
I think the other thing that you asked earlier in terms of frustration, I think the other thing is, and I'm not against banks, but banks are it's a challenge dealing with banks. The old expression that they'll lend you an umbrella when the sun is shining. Banks are very powerful, and they have the ability, and unfortunately they have the reputation of changing the rules of the game midway through the game. So I have people that come to me every once in a while and they say, the bank just cut my line of credit, or I did have this arrangement with them, but the manager's changed and the new manager won't help me. So I always advise my clients to be careful and not to put themselves in a position with the bank. Never put yourself in a position where the bank can pull a plug on you and you can't weather the change. So if you owe the bank $10,000 and they decide to call your line of credit, which they do, $10,000 isn't going to destroy your business. You're going to have to scramble and get a cash advance on your credit card or something, but more than likely you'll come up with the $10,000. If you owe the bank $150,000 and they call your line, are you going to be able to cover that, or are they going to force you out of business? And that's one of the most disappointing things I've seen in business over the years, I have to say, is companies that are doing well and the bank put them out of business, pulled the plug. I can think of 2 very good clients that had really nice companies that I did leases with them. They got into the bank for too much money, and one day and the next day they were gone. That's one of the benefits of leasing, is that if you lease something you make your payment every month, you'll never hear from the leasing company.
Mhm.
If you owe money to the bank, you're required to make reports, which they charge you to review, and they can change the rules partly way through the game. So I tell my clients, if you lease, you can sleep at night because you just make your payments, and then they don't have the power. They're not going to pull a plug on you. Bank financing is generally, it's meant for short term. It's like a line of credit with a bank is supposed to fluctuate. If you have a line of credit of $25,000 and you use that to finance receivables, you've got a large account that's taken an extra week or two to pay, so your line of credit goes up, but it has to fluctuate. If your line of credit stays between $23,000 and $25,000 all the time, then that basically tells the bank that you need $25,000 of working capital, not a $25,000 line of credit. And that's where a lot of businesses get into trouble, because the bank calls the shot. So they may decide one day that, you know what, we're not comfortable with your $25,000 line of credit. We're going to cut it to 15 or cut it to 10. And they don't give you any notice. They just call you one day and say you've got 30 days to get your line down to $10,000. So you have to be careful. Yeah, you have to. I mean, I could go on for hours with bank stories, true stories of things banks have done to people I've dealt with, and it can be pretty hard. So it's important to understand the role of how you finance a business, the role of the bank, the role of shareholders' loans, the role of alternative financing such as leasing.
That's some great advice, great knowledge for any of the listeners here on the show, because this is geared for business owners, right? It's good to know that can happen, right?
Oh, happens more than I'm very disappointed at how often it does happen. I mean, I suppose the flip side is the bank was too lenient when they set up that $25,000 loan. It should only have been $10,000 or $15,000. That's could be the bank's justification of it. But the fact of it is, I see a lot of cases where the banks, because of their power, the bank is really calling the shots. And as I said before, if you're not in a position to be able to respond to the changes, then you're in big trouble. I have clients that they've needed large sums of money. I've one that they needed about $250,000 worth of equipment. And I was able to, because each lender, each leasing company, each bank, they all have a comfort level. So they might say, okay, we're comfortable lending them $25,000, but no more. Well, I put together the leases for this client. He needed equipment total about $250,000. It took me about 9 leasing companies, but I put the leases together. If he'd gone to one leasing company, or if he'd gone to the bank for $250,000, they would have said, no, it's too much. We're not comfortable at $250,000. So it's all about understanding how the game works and how to play it.
It sounds like you know how to play it.
But if he makes his lease payments on the $250,000, which he will, because he's a growing business and the equipment's going to make him a lot of money, additional money, he'll never hear from the leasing companies. Mm-hmm. Whereas if the bank had lent him $250,000, they would have put a mortgage on his house, and they would have been watching, like every month, every quarter, they would have been watching his performance. And God only knows what would have happened if they come into a situation like we're in now. I mean, I know the banks are trying to work with people and help people, but there's only so much they're willing or able to do. So it's important to understand how to finance a business and to be healthy.
Seems like you really understand it.
Well, I try, and I've been around, and I've seen a lot of it. That's the other thing. I've seen a lot of situations that people might not believe it, but these things happen.
Yeah, well, you never know. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes in all sorts of different industries, and you have no idea what's happening. And that's it's always interesting to hear. you know,
Yeah.
what's behind the screen.
Yeah.
We're going to move on here with this kind of a fun question. Every entrepreneur, you know, anybody who starts their own business, they kind of start off with this vision of what life's going to be like, you know, 5 years from now when they're successful and everything's going the way they hope. So I guess the question would be, what was your vision of the future, and how is it either the same or different today than what you initially thought it was going to be?
There's no question there's a lot of satisfaction in being self-employed. The highs are higher and the lows are lower, but it is not an easy job. It's not something you can't turn. It's not like being an employee where you walk away and it's somebody else's responsibility. I guess it's a matter of if the gratification and the satisfaction of building something yourself and seeing the results of your efforts, is that more important than the freedom that an employee might have? I mean, obviously employees, there's problems with being an employee too. So am I where I thought I would be 5 years ago? Sort of. Sort of, you know, but nothing ever works out exactly the way you expect it to be.
Yeah, I guess it's you don't know until you're there, right?
Well, you know, I've known a lot of people in my life who've talked about what they wish they had done. And I think that that's probably one of the saddest things, is you come across people who regret that they never climbed Mount Everest or whatever it is they wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think I'm going to be sitting in my rocker regretting that I didn't try it.
Yeah.
You know, and I know people that hate their jobs. I know people that talk about their regrets. It's a matter of what's important to people and what you want out of life.
Yeah, well, I'm with you there. That's what I'm doing my copywriting and marketing consulting. I want to be an entrepreneur, freelancer, my own boss. And if I don't try it, I mean, if it doesn't work, I'll just, at least I'll know, right? But
yeah,
I gotta try it. Gotta do it.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to fall down.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You fall down, you get back up, and when you fall down, like I said, if I have a deal that I worked hard on and it didn't come through, I'll take the time to go back and see what it is, if there's something that I could have done differently. I mean, I had one the other day. I worked very hard on it, and then I didn't get the deal. And I went back, I analyzed what was it about that deal that why didn't it work? And the answer to that one was that his expectations were not realistic with the market. And I was trying to, I guess I felt that he understood more than he really did, because his expectations were not realistic. It's like saying I want to buy a house for $50,000. You know, you can want something, but it's just not going to happen.
You really filled us in with some great knowledge today.
Thanks.
Is there any advice you want to give to the audience today before we kind of shut the show down here? I mean, you gave us lots of great information, but if there's anything in particular you just want to mention.
Go with your gut feeling. I have to say that if I've learned one thing, where I've made mistakes, in many cases, I can think of situations where my gut instinct told me one thing and I didn't listen to my gut instinct.
Mm.
And I've come to the conclusion that if it doesn't feel right, and you might not be able to even explain why it doesn't feel right, it just doesn't feel right, go with your instincts, because they usually won't let you down.
That's smart. Probably, especially as you gain more experience too, that gut instinct will get a lot stronger, right?
Your instinct is sometimes more realistic and more honest than you are. You might want it so badly,
mm-hmm.
and there may be some reasons why it isn't meant to be or shouldn't be, and you know damn well that it shouldn't be, but you just don't want to let go of the idea. So that's one thing I've certainly learned.
That's some great advice. So everybody, you've heard it here. some great advice from a successful business owner. So how can people reach out to you if they want to find out more about taking advantage of what your business offers, or just to connect?
Well, my toll-free number is 1-877-579-1941.
Hey guys, if you need somebody to review your financing requirements, maybe help you find some solutions during this tough times with COVID, I definitely recommend you check out Mainstream Leasing. Richard, obviously, as you heard on the show, is very knowledgeable in the financing world, and he will probably be able to come up with some very unique solutions to help you out. So make sure you check out his website, mainstreamleasing.com. Connect with them with the number he gave you before. He seems like a great guy, and I recommend you definitely connect with him. Well, Richard, thanks for coming on the show today and sharing all this great information with everybody. That's the show today. To my listeners, please help me spread the word and leave a review on whatever podcast or video platform you're listening to. It is appreciated, and we'll get this valuable content out to those who need it most. And remember to subscribe to the show's channel and click the little bell if you're on YouTube. Awesome. You guys are all great. Thanks for listening to the Actual Marketing Show. Cheers until next time. Do you feel imprisoned? Your business should work for you. You should be in full control. If you feel like an inmate subject to the will of employees, vendors, customers, and the economy, you need change. You need transformation. You need to bust free, take back control, and become the warden. But the problem is, you spent sleepless night after sleepless night, brainstorming meeting after meeting, trying to figure out how to make the change happen. You know one thing, it's revenue. If you can increase the revenue, increase the cash flow, you can take control. Because as long as you're running on fumes, as long as you're just paying your employees on time, as long as you're stagnant, you know nothing's going to change. 30 years from now, you'll still be coasting by. In fact, if you don't make a change, you know in 30 years, you probably won't own a company because it takes revenue, it takes cash flow, it takes money to innovate and keep up with the market. And if you don't have that money to change with the market, you probably won't last 30 more years, probably not even 20, 10 maybe. So how do you go from worried, stuck in the rut, and fighting off the inmates of business like yourself? How do you become the big boss, the warden, the person in control who everybody else respects as a leader because they know you can say no and still continue growing? The leader who can leave the employee wage jobs to the employees. The innovator able to leave the company in the hands of the hired and focus on those 1,000-hour ideas. There's one answer: revenue, cash flow, money. Because with more money, you can hire superstars to run the company without you. Because with more money, you can free up time to focus on the important big picture to generate even more revenue. Because with more money, you can say no to the unruly customer who tries to boss you around and tell you you're nothing without them. Because with more money, you can sleep well at night knowing you are growing. Want to increase your revenue, increase your cash flow, and grow your business? Then you need to talk to me. I generate leads that actually grow your revenue, not those leads that cost you money every time they suck up the sales department's time. How do I do this? Communication. I am a specialist in persuasive messaging. Words are my power. Work with me, and my words will become your tool to executing the great escape to the top. To learn how I can help you bust out of your prison cell and take over the warden's office, visit KylerCallahan.com. CYLERCALLAHAN.com. I also want to give a shout out to SRO for the track Neon Tokyo I use for the intro and outro music. Check out the show notes to go to the track page. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, search me up, Kyler Callahan. If you want to connect with me on Facebook, once again, search me up, Kyler Callahan. Also, links to my Facebook and LinkedIn page will be in the show notes. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Actual Marketing Show.